It's week 10 here in the 32-team franchise. We're going to give you the recaps of each of the games here. So we look at schedule. We have week 10. The Vikings defeat the Chicago Bears 24-14. This is a huge win for RG3. This is where the Bears were leading the division, but on prime time, we have RG3 with 221 yards and 2 TDs in the victory, tying 5-4 with the Bears. So now all of a sudden, the Vikings, who started off pretty poorly, are now in the running for potentially winning the division. Campbell with only 137 yards and a touchdown. Running game there, about 70 yards for Ingram, 65 for Martin, each with a touchdown. Chicago was off to a hot start, but are starting to slow down a little bit here in week 10. Then we look at the next game here. The Houston Texans blow out their division rival, the Jaguars. Foles having a rough game, 102 yards, 1 interception. Meanwhile, Tavares Jackson, who took over the helm at quarterback around week 5 or 6, I think, is now 202 yards, 3 touchdowns, getting the Texans the number 1 place in this AFC South, which is huge for them. Spiller with 127 yards. Jacksonville may consider a quarterback change. I mean, Nick Foles is a rookie this year. They're trying to give him some opportunity to learn and grow. Being 1-8, you don't really need to salvage the season as much as just plan for the number 1 overall pick. But they do have Colt McCoy and Chad Henne, who I might decide will take on that starting role. When we look at the Cleveland Browns versus the Broncos, Cleveland Browns finally get a win after losing 3 straight games prior with 198 yards, 2 touchdowns, an interception. He does lead the game with rushing yards, or at least lead the Browns with 46 yards, with Felix Jones behind him at 45 and a touchdown. We see Jork Bell, 17 yards, Obanio, no yards, but a touchdown. Meanwhile, Sam Bradford, who has been really improving the Denver Broncos this year, he's coming into his own this season, gets 241 yards, 2 TDs, and 3 interceptions. Bradshaw with 119 yards, A.J. Green netting 127 yards receiving. It just was not enough to take down the Cleveland Browns, who are, I believe, the second in the AFC. Then the Titans fall to the 49ers, who go up 7-3 now. Breeze with 324 yards and 3 TDs, perfect QBR, 70% completion, just too much for Josh Freeman, who did come up with 261 yards and 3 TDs himself, and even a better percentage completion with 82. Stewart only had 48 yards. Meanwhile, Foster had 100. We see Alshon Jeffrey, who returned from injury, getting 144 yards plus 2 TDs. That's major for them. There's a lot of injuries with their wide receiver core. And so seeing Jeffrey back was definitely a pleasant surprise, or a pleasant restoration for the 49ers. And then we have Greg Orton there with 1 reception, a 74-yard touchdown. Good for him. And I think that's Denarius Moore, getting 2 touchdowns. Then we have the Buccaneers, who, if you watched the game highlights, that was the highlighted game this week, where there was a tight game, 35-31. Buccaneers were off to a very hot start. I think and Peterson had a good game, 113 yards. Joe Webb, 283, 2 touchdowns. They were able to claw their way back, the Cowboys, to take the lead. They were up by... it was 28-28, I believe, and then they got a field goal to go up 31-28, but the Buccaneers were able to come down and score the touchdown to win the game. So you see Gabbert with 292 yards, 3 touchdowns, 2 interceptions. McFadden, 92 yards. McFadden does lead the league in rushing yards. And then Owen Daniels, 93, Macklin, 91. Then we've got the Carolina Panthers taking the L to the 9-0 New England Patriots. This has been a historic season for New England. We'll see if they can do what the Eagles did back in 2002, 2003 and get an undefeated record heading into the playoffs. Brady with 281 yards and 4 TDs. Spectacular. Flacco, 241 yards and a touchdown. We see Lorenzo Booker with 112 yards and 2 TDs rushing, while Jamal Charles had 167 yards and 1 touchdown. We see a very good spread there on the receiving core with 4 different receivers netting over 50 yards receiving for the Patriots. Then the Buffalo Bills, really struggling these past few weeks. I might have to go and show you their recent schedule, but they've just been getting pounded recently. The Dolphins move up to 500 in what should be a better season with Newton and Calvin Johnson Jr. We see Jordy Nelson with 91 yards, 2 touchdowns. Joe McKnight at 75 yards and 1 touchdown. We have Forte with 30 yards and no touchdowns, but Forte, I think, got injured during the game, so McKnight took over. But yeah, the Buffalo Bills have been just not doing well these past few weeks. I think they were scoreless, or they scored in garbage time, so a lot of work needs to be done for Buffalo. Eagles just squashed the Seahawks. We see 200 yards, 2 touchdowns for McNabb, but that came from just complete control of the game. Eli Manning with 189 yards and 1 touchdown, 3 interceptions. Marshawn Lynch, beast mode, only getting 29 yards. This has really been a disappointing season for the Seahawks. However, they do have the talent to not be out of the playoff race, but they're definitely not doing the best they could. We need to see a lot more from them. And then we have the Green Bay Packers squashing the Lions. Tannehill only getting 146 yards, but 3 turnovers. Reggie Bush, 44 yards. They trailed for most of the game. Stafford only getting 165 yards, but 2 TDs and the interception. McCoy on the ground was great, 118 yards and 1 touchdown. So the Packers continue to move up, 5-5 in the North. The Giants here have 31-10 victory. Saints are just not doing great. Tebow's probably likely on his way out. He's got 127 yards, 1 touchdown, 1 interception. Meanwhile, Palmer, 144 yards and 1-1. Just a little bit better, but it really comes down to Ryan Matthews getting 208 yards rushing with 2 TDs, a 75-yard long run. When Tebow leads you with 39 yards and Isaiah Pead, the rookie first-round pick, getting 34. Not what you want to see from the Saints. But the Giants go up 5-4. Saints are still quite at the bottom of the league. Then we've got the San Diego Chargers going 6-3, beating the Cincinnati Bengals, dropping 4-5. Brody Croyle, 159 yards, a TD, and an interception. Aaron Rodgers, 202 with 3 TD and 2 interceptions. Marion Barber, who's been playing for the injured Beanie Wells, has had a good year. 77 yards there in this game. Antonio Gates with 86. We see Noshawn Marino and Hardesty netting over 100 yards together, about 126. And then Anquan Bolden, Spaeth, James Hardy chipping in there as receivers. Then the Baltimore Ravens keep the Oakland Raiders scoreless. Just an absolute domination on defense. We see Colin Kaepernick with 2 turnovers, Matt Ryan with 2 turnovers, and then Kaepernick getting 166 yards, Ryan only 148. Ray Rice, 136 yards on the ground. Meanwhile, Sean Green and Pierce combined for 51. Julio Jones, only 66 yards with 3 receptions. Just nothing was working for the Oakland Raiders in this game. But the Ravens go from a 1-7 team to a 2-7 team. They're still pretty much at the bottom of the league. Then the Atlanta Falcons on Sunday Night Football put the Commanders away. We see a 6-4 record for Atlanta. Peyton Manning getting into more and more rhythm. The Falcons working their way back to being a playoff contender, Super Bowl contender. Peyton Manning, 318, 4 touchdowns, 1 interception. Michael Vick with a mediocre game, 155 yards, a TD, and an interception, 35 yards rushing. Goodson got 88 yards and a TD, while McGahee was 72 yards. Meacham with 128 yards, a good receiving target for the Falcons. And we see Manning spread his 4 touchdowns to 4 different receivers. Then we have on Monday Night Football, the Indianapolis Colts defeating the Arizona Cardinals. We have the 171 yards for Brady Quinn and 2 touchdowns, all he needs to win. Meanwhile, Andy Dalton had 300 yards, but 3 TDs and 3 interceptions. The running game was on point for the Colts with 170 yards by Chris Johnson. Leon Washington getting 15 there, but it's the 3 touchdowns that really helped the Colts get that 5 touchdown game. We see Reggie Wayne, Victor Cruz getting the pair of TDs, whereas the Arizona rushing game was absolutely non-existent. You have Donald Brown, 25 yards, Dalton, 22, Darren Sproles, 16. Dallas Clark did well with 107 yards. Chris Givens had that big touchdown, and that was deflected. And you got that big touchdown, and I believe it was like the end of the first half. But overall, we see some changes there, some big games that are helping shape this league. Patriots are still in the clear. I suppose they're going to clinch the division very soon. We only have about 7 games left. Browns in command of the North. We see Pittsburgh right behind them at 5-4. Bengals kind of neck and neck there, but on 2-game losing streak, which is not great for them. The South is led by the Texans, and the Colts are about a half game behind them. We'll see if the Colts under Brady Quinn and Chris Johnson can really take control of this division, or if Houston under Tavares Jackson will continue into the playoffs. Jackson's is a weird career because everywhere he's gone, he's had a good chance of making the playoffs. He just doesn't go very far in the playoffs. He's about an 82, 83 overall quarterback, but sometimes doesn't always play that way in the postseason. AFC West, we've got the San Diego Chargers, 6-3, about 2 games ahead of their opponents. Denver now 4-5. I mean, we see both the Raiders and the Broncos, who were about 4-3 together, now being 4-5 together. The Chiefs just 1 game separating them from their division. Then you've got the Philadelphia Eagles, 7-3. Washington Commanders behind them by 2. Commanders were in front in the division, but now are falling behind the Eagles after they're going up 4 games on a win streak. Giants are starting to pick up where they were before, used to being 3-4, now 5-5. And then Dallas Cowboys, I don't know if they'll play the QB carousel some more, because right now Russell Wilson started, did not do well. They have been having Joe Webb in. Webb has had some good games, but he's not winning games, so I might put Russell Wilson back maybe at the end of the season. Maybe I'll give Fitzpatrick a game or 2 to see if he's any different. But they are in one of the toughest divisions in football. The NFC North is very tight. You see the Vikings and Bears a half game ahead of the Packers. This is going to be an interesting division to watch the remainder of the year to see which one of these teams can come out of this division on top. And who knows if they'll send more than one team to the playoffs, and there's a good chance of that. The NFC South, we see the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, 3 games ahead of the Falcons. I don't think the Falcons are good enough at this point, or the Tampa Bay Buccaneers are frauds enough to lose the top of the division. But I think the Falcons with Manning are probably going to make the playoffs. They might be the 5th seed, that best wild card spot, and we'll see if that continues. Carolina falling a little short there, 2 losses so far in a row, and then the Saints with 4 losses in a row. You can see the San Francisco 49ers leading now by 2 games. Andrew Luck's Rams on a 2-game win streak going 5-4. And then you got the Seattle Seahawks and Arizona Cardinals just struggling. The Cardinals were 4-2, and now they're 4-6, falling deeper and lower in the division. But as we look at some stats here to kind of wrap up the video, Manning is at almost 3,000 yards here in week 10. We have Newton, Brady, McNabb, Breeze. Touchdown leaders, Manning is the leader with Brady, Newton, and McNabb behind him. If we look at rushing, we still have McFadden, 1,200 yards. I mean, this man could break the record possibly if he keeps running this way. Chris Johnson also up there. We see a handful of running backs here just inching their way to over 1,000 yards, and we'll see how many do. And then Chris Johnson running away with the touchdowns, 18 on the year. Receiving, Calvin Johnson and Greg Jennings have been the top 2 in the league this entire time. They stay at the top, and we see Ted Ginn, Larry Fitzgerald, Emmanuel Sanders, kind of Ted Ginn already over 1,000, and then the rest of them are kind of in the 700s here. Touchdown leaders are Calvin Johnson, Andre Johnson. We see Ted Ginn, Golden Tate with the Bears. I'll go through these a little quicker if you want to take a look at them, but Palomalu now up there with 57 tackles for the Browns. Geno Atkins is the sack leader. Antrell Roll there with the Commanders. Kicking there, Josh Brown now has the most field goals made. That's interesting. And we look at rankings. Falcons now claim number 1 spot there for offense. Rams number 1 defense, which is an interesting stat there. And then when you scroll down to the worst, we see Jacksonville still abysmal on offense. Raiders behind them, which is shocking with Matt Ryan, Julio Jones, Sean Green. Saints, the worst defense. Falcons, worst defense. I believe that because I think that's what's keeping the Falcons down. We see them, Atlanta Falcons, 31 allowed rush yards. That's pretty bad. So they got the number 1 offense, but the 31st ranked defense. Not what you want to see from a Super Bowl contender. But we'll see if Brad Childress can get that team going again. So the primetime game next week is the Buccaneers versus the Patriots, and that is going to be an exciting game. Can the New England Patriots continue to be undefeated, or will the Buccaneers tie them for the best record in the NFL? So I think I'll probably have to share that game for all of you because I think that's going to be an interesting one. My money's on the Patriots, especially being at home, but we will see if that happens to be the case. But thanks for watching, and please like and subscribe if you like these videos. I'll try to have some more unique videos coming out, kind of sharing history of the league. We'll see how those go. But thanks again for watching, and hope you enjoy it.